Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Just try and picture it. You're James Cameron,
Right.
the guy, the legend, Titanic, Terminator, and you've basically been living on Pandora, with Avatar for decades now.
Mm-hmm. Deeply immersed.
Totally. You've got sequels planned way out, huge productions are finishing up, and then suddenly word gets out. You're actually tapping the brakes on starting the next Avatar movie.
Yeah.
To go adapt a totally new fantasy book about monsters fighting
Ugh.
flesh-eating elves.
It's that contrast that's so striking, isn't it? After all that time in one universe, such a sharp turn. It definitely makes you ask, okay, what's really going on here?
Exactly. So that's what we're going to dive into. We've got articles, notes from statements he's made, trying to piece together where Cameron's creative focus really is right now.
Okay.
What new stories is he chasing?
Yes.
What's the latest from Pandora itself?
And really, what can you, listening, take away from all this? What does it tell us about the creative drive of someone operating at that kind of level? Right. We're looking at the specific info we have, trying to get a clear picture of his current priorities and maybe what that signals for the future.
Okay, so let's get right into that big surprise element we found. It looks like the immediate start for Avatar 4 production. The one aiming for 2029 is being put on hold for a bit.
That's the sources indicate, yeah. He's not just rolling straight from finishing up Avatar. Fire and Ash has the third one into prepping the fourth one on set. Not like maybe we assumed.
And the reason for hitting pause is this completely different thing we just mentioned. Adapting Joe Abercrombie's novel, The Devils.
Exactly. It seems to be happening sort of alongside Fire and Ash wrapping up its, massive post-production work. The immediate focus is shifting to this new world, not planning Avatar 4's main shoot just yet.
So let's talk The Devils. What do we know about this book? Why has it grabbed his attention so much?
Well, the basics are, it's a fantasy novel by Joe Abercrombie. Came out really recently. Sounds like just last month, actually.
Wow.
And it hit the bestseller list straight away. Cameron's company, Lightstorm Entertainment, snapped up the rights.
And it's not just like buying the option and handing it off.
Yeah.
There's a real partnership planned here, right?
Yeah.
Cameron and Abercrombie are going to co-write the script.
Yeah, that co-writing part is it's pretty telling. Suggests Cameron's really invested, wants to shape it right from the beginning, working directly with the author.
We also learned Cameron's actually been a fan of Abercrombie for a while, like a big fan. Mentioned loving the First Law books,
Yeah.
Best Served Cold. Apparently, he really shouted out, love it, for that one, and the Age of Madness trilogy, too.
Right, so having that history as a reader kind of gives context for why this new book might click with him. He specifically said he was drawn to the freshness of the world and the characters in The Devils.
And we have to talk about the premise again, because,
Okay.
a special force of monsters tasked to save Europe from flesh-eating elves. That is not Pandora.
Definitely a change of pace. Cameron called bringing these indelible characters to life a joyful new challenge. And that wording feels important, Joyful new challenge. It suggests a real spark from tackling something so different.
Abercrombie's reaction was noted, too. Sounds like he's thrilled. Called his own book a weird and wonderful monster, and basically said Cameron is the perfect director for it.
Seems like a good match, creatively, mutual respect there. But, one question that kind of hangs there from the info we looked at is the timing.
Right.
Avatar 4 is still officially on the books for 2029. So how deeply involved can Cameron be in the day-to-day of The Devils production with that massive deadline looming? That's something we'll need to see.
Yeah, the Pandora clock is still ticking. But The Devils isn't the only other project that came up in the material, was it? What else is potentially on his radar?
Well, there was mention of another adaptation he's set to direct, The Last Train from Hiroshima, based on the book by Charles Pellegrino.
And one that seems to pop up every few years, The Informationist, from the Taylor Stevens novel.
Right, The Informationist. Lightstorm actually got the rights for that way back in 2012, so it's been, simmering for a long time.
And there was that reminder note that Cameron once said he planned to direct The Informationist himself after the Avatar movies were all done.
Yeah, though, honestly, the source we saw sounded a little skeptical about that one happening soon, kind of a don't hold your breath vibe, given how long it's been around and these other more immediate projects now.
Fair enough. Timelines are tricky. Okay, let's shift back. What's the absolute latest from Pandora, specifically about Avatar, Fire and Ash?
So like we said, Fire and Ash #3 is apparently winding down production. Sounds like post-production is wrapping up. We should probably expect a trailer before too long.
Okay.
And it's still holding that December 2025 release date.
And the dates for the next ones, 4 and 5, those are still locked in, 2029 and 2031.
Yep. Those dates were reaffirmed in the material.
Now, one really interesting detail about Fire and Ash was about its runtime. He said it's going to be a little bit longer than Way of the Water.
Which was already, what, 3 hours and 12 minutes? So yeah, longer than that.
And the reason why it's longer is actually pretty fascinating. Gives you a peek behind the scenes, doesn't it? It wasn't arbitrary.
No, not at all. The explanation they gave was really insightful. Cameron apparently said they had too many great ideas packed into Act 1 of Movie 2, meaning the original plan for Movie 2, which became Way of the Water, he felt that version just moved too fast, like a bullet train, he said. And they weren't getting deep enough into the characters, not drilling down enough.
So the fix was basically to split it. Take some of that dense opening intended for Movie 2 and let it become the core of Movie 3, Fire and Ash.
That's exactly it. Splitting it gave the story, and maybe more importantly, the characters, room to breathe. The co-writer, Amanda Silver, backed this up. She said something like, these movies are a lot more than just propulsive plot and gorgeous spectacle.
Right.
She really emphasized that these are real characters, and they just needed that space to, live and develop properly.
That's actually really telling. It shows that even with all the huge spectacle and the tech, that character stuff is still a massive priority, enough to actually reshape the structure across multiple films.
Absolutely.
Speaking of Fire and Ash, did they mention any, early reactions? Has anyone seen it?
Cameron did say a little bit about that. He's shown it to a few selected people and feels pretty good about it based on their feedback.
Okay, pretty good. From Cameron is probably quite good. Did he share what they said?
Yeah, the quote was that the feedback was, it's definitely the most emotional and maybe the best of the 3 so far.
Wow. Most emotional and best of the 3. That's pretty strong praise.
It really is. Especially that most emotional part. If that turns out to be true for audiences too, it really suggests that their whole strategy, splitting the story, focusing more on character in this 3rd film, might be paying off exactly as they hoped.
Okay, so let's kind of wrap up what we've pulled from all this. Big picture. James Cameron. Definitely not just thinking about Avatar right now. He's actively, deliberately carving out time for brand new stuff, like this wild-sounding fantasy adaptation, The Devils, and maybe that Hiroshima project, too.
But at the same time, the whole Avatar engine is absolutely still churning. Fire and Ash is nearly done. It's on track for 2025. And we learned its longer runtime and structure were very intentional choices, all about deepening the characters.
Which seems to be landing well based on that early feedback.
Exactly.
So for you listening, what does this mix tell you? Staying deep in Pandora, but also actively chasing these completely different creative itches. Where do you think Cameron's energy is really flowing right now?
And does knowing why Fire and Ash is longer, why they focused on character, and hearing that early, most emotional feedback, does that change how you're feeling about the next trip back to Pandora?
It definitely shows a director, even one managing this huge franchise, still driven by the excitement of, diving into totally fresh worlds.
Oh, sure.
So here's a final thought to maybe chew on. We know Cameron is specifically taking this break before diving headfirst into Avatar 4, which, remember, isn't due till 2029. He's using this time to greenlight and co-write this completely new monsters versus elves fantasy thing, The Devils. What might that specific timing, that pivot right now suggest about maybe the creative need for even someone like him to just step away from the familiar, to embrace something totally, maybe even joyfully different after spending so long in just one universe?